lot of people ask us, what is tested on the GRE? So that's what we're going to talk about here. So when you go in to take the GRE, you have a total of 6 sections. The first section is actually 2 separate sections. There are 2 essays. Each one is 30 minutes, so the section itself takes an hour. The 2 essays are an analysis of an issue and an analysis of the argument. The analysis of an issue has to do with like a kind of everyday statement of opinion, and then you say how much you agree or disagree with that. It's your opinion, so you can say, I agree. The next is an analysis of an argument, so that's also 30 minutes. Now that's different. That's not first person. You're given someone else's argument and asked to evaluate it. The fact that it's on the GRE means it's a very poor argument, so that you'll be able to find lots of holes to poke in their argument. So those are your 2 essays, and you do get a separate essay score at the end of the section, or end of the test, and your essay goes from 0 to 6. So that is kind of separate from the rest of your scores. Now, after your essays are finished, you're going to do 2 more sections, followed by a break, followed by 3 more sections. Each of these sections is about a half hour long. It depends on whether it's math or verbal. Now, out of these 5 sections, only 4 of them count. One of them is an experimental section. The GRE makers are testing future test questions, so you won't know which section it is. It can be any of the 5 sections, and it can be either a math or a verbal section. When you finish your test, you'll know, well, I had 3 math sections, so one of them wasn't real, I just don't know which one was. That's what happened to me on test day. I had 3 math sections. So we're just pretending for a second that the mystery section is that one, but again, it could be any of the 5. So that leaves you 2 math and 2 verbal for these other 4. And these can come in any order. So we'll just pretend it goes math, verbal, verbal, math. And again, we just don't know what the order is. So the thing about the GRE is it is an adaptive test. What that means is your 2 math sections are connected. Everybody's going to get the same first math section, but depending on how you do, you'll get an easier or harder math section second. Now, what you want to do is do your best here, and then you'll get a harder section here, but that gives you access to the higher scores. It's kind of like they figure out where you are on the scale approximately, and then the second section determines where in there you are. So you don't want to do poorly on the first, because then you're already down at the low end, and you're going to have a really hard time working yourself out of that. The 2 verbal sections are also adaptive, so how you do on your first verbal determines what the second verbal will look like. Now, the math sections are each 35 minutes, the verbals are 30 minutes each. So the total is about 4 hours, and it really does take 4 hours. So let's talk about what are on the math and the verbal. So the math sections, the 2 of them, they have various kinds of problems. They have some that are multiple choice, choose one, a couple that are fill in the blank, a couple that are asking you to compare 2 values, which one's bigger, and then you have even charts and graphs and things like that. So there's various kinds of questions, but the areas of math you're being tested on are arithmetic, and seriously, arithmetic, adding fractions, dividing numbers, that kind of stuff. You definitely have algebra and geometry. Next, I'd say you have various kinds of word problems, things like rates and probabilities. You have number property questions. So number properties are things like primes and prime factors. You also have charts and graphs that you have to read. And if there's a chart and graph on the GRE, it's tricky, just know that. And also you're finally tested on statistics, things like averages, weighted averages, things along those lines. In the verbal section, the things you're tested on are very much reading comprehension and vocabulary. Now, they have various ways they test these 2 things. The readings range from like seriously 2-line long passages to maybe 45-line passages. The longer ones tend to have multiple questions, the shorter ones tend to have 1. The vocabulary is tested in various ways. Sometimes you have 1, 2, or 3 blanks in a passage, and you have to select from a choice of words which word would fit into that blank. You will need to memorize a lot of words for your GRE. So those are the basics that are tested. Now, just to finish this up, you then do get a math score and a verbal score. And so your math and verbal scores both go from 130 to 170. So essay goes from 0 to 6, math and verbal go from 130 to 170. The 3 scores are always left separate. They never combine them. So you all have 3 scores reported to the schools. The averages on math and verbal are right around that 151, 152 level, just so you have a good sense of what the average is. And those are the basics of what is on the GRE.